morning. I'm with Eric Schurr this morning. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Chuck.
Eric and I met briefly a year ago, and I don't know if he recalls this, but it was at our area speech contest. And I briefly talked to him following the contest itself, wanted to introduce myself to him. And ever since then, I've wanted to have a chance to talk with you. And especially after the District 6 Table Topics International Speech Contest this past Saturday, I definitely wanted to have a chance to talk with him, to find out more about his journey in Toastmasters, and to sort of find out a little bit more about what makes him such a great speaker. So with that, without any further delay, welcome to Coffee with Chuck, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me. And so you know, I do remember that brief conversation that we had after the meeting.
I hope it wasn't too awkward. I kind of recall kind of pushing my way through the crowd, and I have to at least introduce myself to this fellow before he leaves the room. So,
you know, the awkward part is every time I've seen you since, I've said, "Is that who I think it is?" So I wasn't quite sure though. So now I know it's you, and it's great to be with you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for taking some time this morning. As I mentioned, I'm really interested in hearing about your Toastmaster journey. Eric, how many years have you been in Toastmasters?
I have been in Toastmasters for 14 years. In 2007 is when I started. I hope that math works out. Funny enough, it was actually 3 years before that I was first invited to Toastmasters. Wonderful lady, Nancy Martin, asked me to join the club or come check them out. And I wanted to go, but for some odd reason, I didn't. It took me 3 years to actually get into that step. And I think I knew I was a good talker, but I think that was more ego than it was confidence. And I think I was just afraid that I was going to get knocked down a few notches, right, which I was, but it turned out to be a fantastic thing. So 14 years and loving it ever since.
You know, that's interesting. I think that's probably a common experience with many of us, that the first invitation is not actually the first time that we go to a meeting. For some reason, we're reluctant maybe to act on that invitation, but when we do, we find it to be an interesting experience.
Absolutely. Yep, I'm definitely glad I did.
Yeah. So you were invited. It took a while before you actually went to a meeting, but what kind of drew you into it?
At some point, I knew I wanted to get better. I've always had the gift of gab. I can get into a room and I can, I can talk for hours on end. And I led a lot of training sessions. So I had a lot of formats and forums where I could really express that. But what I noticed is, even though I can talk for a half hour, people were maybe only getting a good 5 minutes worth of good information out of all my blabbing. So I really hoped Toastmasters would be the way where I could add more punch, more impact to everything I was saying. And it really turned out to be that way. Toastmasters, I like to crack the joke, you know, some people go to Toastmasters to learn when to talk. I came to Toastmasters to learn when to shut up, you know, to make spaces in what I'm saying, to better package what I'm saying. And it's really been a godsend in terms of, again, giving my speech that punch, that impact, leaving them with good information and things they can relate to. That's really what Toastmasters helped bring to me.
You know, that has to be one of the more unique explanations of what we get out of Toastmasters. You know, for many of us, it's just, I need to learn how to say something, to get something to come out of my mouth when I'm in front of a group of people. And in your case, it was the opposite. I know how to better, as you say, repackage your message or to make it even more effective when you speak. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So this year you're serving as president of 5-Star Speakers Club. And, you know, as every one of us knows, this has been a year like no other. We've had all these different challenges, you know, with primarily having to work with an online format and everything. How has your club worked with these challenges?
Our club, again, like any other club, we struggled. When I joined the club, they were already having the virtual meetings, so that was great. I joined midway through the beginning of the COVID crisis. So, but what I noticed, and I've noticed with a lot of clubs, is even though they successfully made the transfer from in-person meetings to virtual meetings, and maybe in some people's cases hybrid meetings, they're still kind of in the keep the lights on mode, which is, yes, we're still having the meetings, we're still meeting every week, we're still following the agenda. But the big piece I saw suffering was the recruiting of membership portion, to really okay, we have the lights on, awesome, now we really need to focus on growing our people and growing our membership. So that took a little while. Because, of course, me being new, I'm going with the flow. I'm doing what they're doing because I don't want to upset the dynamic before I know what that is.
Right.
But what we ended up doing is we actually ended up having a virtual open house. The 5-Star Speakers Club has some great people there. Even if I wasn't there, they would have done, just fine. So with the great people there, they were able to put together a virtual open house, and we got a great number of guests. Like a lot of open houses, we offered door prizes, a drawing, some other fun stuff in there. Unfortunately, with the virtual format, you can't offer pizza.
Right.
That makes my heart cry.
Right.
But we were able to get in new members and some very well contributing members as well. Some great personalities walked in the door. So again, I think the big thing there to focus in on is, if your club is still just kind of keeping the lights on, just keeping the train moving,
right,
maybe it's time to start branching out. Okay, we're stable. Let's start trying to improve people's lives and improve our membership.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, it's true with our club as well. I mean, there were certainly those that really saw Toastmasters as being part of, having that in-person aspect to it was so crucial. But then again, as time went on, we found that, it made it more accessible in a way with online meetings.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, and just the ability to be able to reach more people was a huge plus. So let's talk about your speech contests. You, as I mentioned at the start, you have this incredibly unique style. When we talk about, the use of gestures or the use of vocal variety or the ways, just the myriad of different ways that we appeal to an audience, you do such a wonderful way about that. Can you tell us a little bit about your approach to speech contests? What sort of sparks your interest in that part of the Toastmasters?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for all the compliments. My very first approach is I have to be me. I really do have to be me. And my approach is kind of clearing the way so that I can be myself. I have a very hyper style, and I do have to calm myself down sometimes for the sake of changing up my rhythm and my pitch and everything else. But at the same time, I have to be me. I have a very goofy, comical style. But another thing Toastmasters has really helped me learn is to drop some heart bombs too, as well. Just say some things that people can really feel. So my approach to speech contests is, first of all, in terms of what inspires my speeches, is my whole life has kind of seemed like a gag reel. I'm one of those, nothing ever seems to go right for me. I have to do things multiple times before I actually get it right. And the way I found to cash in on that is all those failures in the past, rather than letting those depress me, rather than letting those, think feel like I can't do anything right. Grab those stories, tell those stories and really wring out the rag when it comes to all the emotions and lessons that we get out of those stories. Mm-hmm. So, because honestly, I think people would rather listen to those failure stories than the ultimate success stories, because I think that's what they more relate to. So that's what I bring into the speech contests, and it makes for funny stories. But again, at the same time, I can spin those funny stories into meaningful messages. So, and the rest becomes all polished.
Yeah, that was certainly my feeling as well. There, you're touching on themes that resonate with all of us. So, how do you prepare for these speech contests? I think that everyone has their own approach, but I'm just really curious to hear about your particular approach to it.
Right. The very first thing I like to do is go minimalist. So I'll freehand write out my speech, just brain dump, get it all on that piece of paper.
Yeah.
And then what I like to do is really narrow it down, get all the noise words, all the side details, all the excessive details, really get that speech down to only the things that need to be said. And there's a lot of cutting that happens there. I may start out, it'll be 1,500 words. Mm-hmm. And after that cutting process, it may be down to 700 words. Right. So we're talking 50% or over. And then at that point, and of course, while I'm doing that, I base that on what my message is. If mm-hmm. I could say my message in one line, the one thing I want you to know, what is that message? And then I clear out everything that doesn't have anything to do or doesn't support that message. So once I've done that, then I have a good foundation to know, okay, I have a low word count. Woo! Now it's time to add some things back in. It's time to add some flavor. So I really start building it back up from there. Except now I have a good mind around anything I add, it has to support the message. If it doesn't support the message, well, then it better bring some flavor. So if it doesn't meet any of those two rules, then it really doesn't go in. And that's one of the major ways that I really tear my speech down, then slowly build it back up again, and kind of make sure every single piece of it, every single word of it works for what I'm doing. I hope
that sounds like a very time-consuming process. How long typically are you working on one particular speech?
Oh boy. Let's quote months first. For this particular round of speech contest, I've been working on it for 4 or 5 months. Okay. And you could consider it even longer than that if you consider that. Remember, I'm doing stories from my life, stories from my childhood, and secret, I spend a lot of time inside my head. So, I've been building these stories for a very long time. So the cleanup process, we're looking at 3, 4, 5 months. Just kind of taking, even if it's only 5 minutes a day, seeing if I can just spend a little bit of time on it every single day.
Yeah. One of the wonderful things that Toastmaster does, it gives us a formal process where we can get evaluated on our speeches.
Yes.
To what extent did you use outside feedback to keep honing your speech?
A lot more this year than in previous years. This year, I really put it in front of as many people as I possibly can, because that's a great source of feedback. Because we're all incredibly biased. No matter how good we think our speech is, we don't know until we've actually given it to people. Those jokes that we think are going to hit, that we think are hilarious, could fall flat. Or some of the things that were just side details that we didn't think were a joke at all, people will, boom, just start laughing at right off the top. So yeah, until you give that speech in front of 2 other people and get their feedback, you really don't know how good your speech is. I very much maximized that this year.
Okay. Is there a point where you say, okay, I appreciate all the feedback that I've gotten, but from this point on, no more feedback. I have it to where I want to. Now I just need to perfect it, practice it.
Only in small specific spurts. An example would be my contest is 2 days away. Mm-hmm. All right. In that case, memorize. It's right. Make sure you have all those words and your gestures. Don't change any content between that mm-hmm. day and that day unless it feels very natural. So yeah, but only in those small spurts. Your speech can always get better. Your speech, so past that point, once you get that contest out of the way and you have a bit longer of a period to build your speech, always look. Matter of fact, that's the point where you should be getting outside feedback, because it means you've hit the wall. You have either fallen so in love with your speech that you don't think it can get any better, or you just can't think of any other ways to improve it. That's the point when you really need to give it to outside audiences, because they will break you out of that trap that you're stuck in.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I have to ask you about table topics, and that's something that, that impromptu speaking format, which is so scary for us. But it strikes me that when I see such polished speakers as yourself do table topics, what's so remarkable is how you can grasp the question and then formulate an approach to it very, very quickly. And then in the very short space of 2 minutes, be able to have a definable start, middle, and end to it that leaves all of us as an audience with a particular emotion or a particular feeling. What's your secret to table topics?
My secret, I have a very bland formula. I think we all have, bland isn't the word, a very basic algorithm towards the table topics, which is a good friend of mine told me once that every single thing that we go through in life can boil down to a basic principle. So I spend, in terms of prepping for table topics, I spend a lot of time to know what my basic principles are. Let me give you just one example. No matter what the situation is in front of you, when you have something new in front of you, get in and try your best. Let the results be what they're going to be. And it's basic principles like that, to where if you can give your 1 minute, 2 minute elevator speech on that basic principle, then the formula that I basically use is listening to the question, mind clear. As they're reading off the question, what scenario are they putting me in?
Right.
And then what basic principle does that narrow down to? And then what's an example of that basic principle? And if you can't think of an example, they already gave you a scenario, so you have one. And then as I launch into it, I'll act out the scenario. I will be in the moment to, live the scenario that they just gave you. It gives you a chance to pump the energy into it, grab their attention, then connect that question to the principle and give them the speech on the basic principle. The last contest I was in was the principle of taking reactions and opinions and taking the very temporary nature of those and converting them into understandings. So, and again, if you can connect, people get stuck on the specificity of a question and they try to answer that specific question. And I think that's where they go wrong. But when you connect it to that underlying principle, that broader concept that the question really revolves around, right, you can speak a little longer on it. So when it comes to my output, it's just, attention getter, grand principle, give that example, repeat the grand principle, out. So, and that formula was worked. I've won district for table topics twice now. It's been extremely effective for me.
That is a great piece of advice. I will certainly keep that in mind as well going forward. Eric, you've given us a lot of information about your journey at Toastmasters. Appreciate that. I certainly wish you the very best going forward. And again, congratulations on winning the District 6 Table Topics International Speech Contest. From all of us at District 6, we wish you the very best going forward in subsequent contests. And, with these Coffee with Chuck interviews, I always like to end it with the person I'm speaking with sort of talking to an audience that we don't directly see. Those people that maybe are thinking about Toastmasters or those people that are in Toastmasters right now, what would you say to them about if they're kind of on the wire with the value of Toastmasters? What kind of message would you have for them?
I would tell them, make sure you're bringing your whole self to the meetings. Remember, even if we go along to the beat of someone else's drum, if we follow the Toastmasters process, it will get us somewhere. But in order to make sure you're getting exactly where you want to go, you need to tell people exactly where you want to go. So think about why you came to Toastmasters, the original reason, not all the awards, the original reason of what you wanted to do better when you came to Toastmasters. Tell people that, make sure you're moving in that direction, and make sure you're accomplishing those results that you wanted to going in there. If you don't do that, you're only going to get partial results, and hopefully those partial results work for you, but you can do so much more. Bring your whole self.
I like that. Thank you for that message, Eric. Well, again, appreciate your time this morning, and I hope we have a chance to talk again.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Chuck. Great to see you again.
All right.